On December the 12th, voters will go to the polls to decide who will represent them in Parliament and who will lead the country at this critical time in our history. So what's the truth behind the competing visions of the parties, and what do their plans mean for you? Tonight I'm joined by the leader of the Brexit party, Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, this election should have been your finest hour. Instead, you've barely got a walk-on part. What went wrong?
Well, I think if you look at it, back in early April this year, I formed a coalition. I brought together some Conservatives, brought together some Labour people, all of whom very unhappy that 3 years after the referendum, we were literally going nowhere. Brexit was in the weeds. A second referendum was coming down the track, 500,000 people marching in London. So what we did is we fought the European elections, won it dramatically, and completely reshaped the debate around Brexit. So in a sense, what we did was to create Boris Johnson and a narrative that in 2017 had been Brexit means Brexit, and now it's let's get Brexit done.
And now you're going nowhere.
Well, I mean,
you're marginalised, irrelevant in this election.
I don't think if you came with me and visited some of the Labour heartlands in the north, you would think that. And I also think that what we've done is have a very dramatic effect on this election. I mean, I think number one, the decision, difficult decision, but the decision I took in 317 seats to stand down.
These are the Tory-held seats.
That's right. And what that's done, it's poleaxed the Liberal Democrats. They were going to win in South London, down through Surrey, right out to the west of England. They were going to win a lot of seats if we'd stood, and I knew that wasn't the right thing to do. So I think we've stopped the Liberal Democrat surge, stopped a second referendum, and now what we're doing, and this is not really noticed very much in London, and you won't get it from the pollsters, but what we're actually doing now is tearing chunks out of the Labour vote, and that does two things.
Well, hold on, because just after the European elections, you were puffed up enough to talk about delivering a complete realignment of British politics. Now you might not win a single seat,
do you know something?
And you're not even standing yourself.
Do you know something? Well, we'll come to that. Do you know something? As you know, from August, I wanted to try and put together a Brexit alliance because I believe that this is a defining issue of our age, working together in a sensible cooperation with the Conservatives.
Right. And you failed.
And there were some Labour figures that wanted to do it. And I failed because the Conservative Party didn't want to do it.
I mean, it was hubris, wasn't it?
No.
To talk about a complete realignment from a party that, as I say, might not win a single seat and whose leader isn't even standing for Parliament.
Well, I think realignment's needed, much needed.
Yeah, but it isn't going to happen.
The Conservative Party do not want anything to change, and that is what I've come to realise.
So it was hubris?
No, it wasn't hubris, it's ambition.
An ambition that failed?
At this stage, we don't look like fundamentally reforming British politics. But do I think there is an appetite for it? Absolutely.
And today, 4 of your own MEPs, members of the European Parliament, have resigned to back the Conservatives. One of them, Annunciata Rees-Mogg, says, quote, the Conservatives are the only option for Brexit supporters. She's right, isn't she?
No, she's on the numbers, she couldn't be more wrong. We've been down this road before. I remember in 2015, when I was leading UKIP, and people like you saying to me, aren't you going to split the Conservative vote and let Labour in? And of course, the opposite happened because we took far more Labour votes in the key seats in the Midlands in that campaign. And actually, the Conservatives got a majority because of this. And in this election, enough
of the walk down memory lane. You've got 4 of your MEPs a week before polling day have resigned and said, vote Tory.
All right, well, let's just run through that very quickly. One of them is the sister of a cabinet minister.
What's that got to do with it?
Hang on. One of them is the sister of a cabinet minister.
Smear.
Another one has a boyfriend working for that cabinet minister. Fact. And another one is a personal friend of Boris Johnson's. Now, they joined, not smears, they're facts. Yeah. They joined the Brexit party.
And you paraded them.
They joined the coalition that I put together. Now, they clearly were disaffected with Mrs. May as leader. And we're not the Conservative Party. And I'll tell you something. Boris Johnson's deal, unamended, is unacceptable, and I certainly stand by that.
Well, I'll come on to that in a moment. But you knew Annunciata Rees-Mogg, her brother, was in the cabinet, but you still paraded her.
Well,
you knew he was a Tory MP.
Actually,
you paraded her, and now you say, "Oh, well, it's just she's doing this simply because her brother is a Tory."
Well, at the time,
that's not right, is it?
At the time, Jacob Rees-Mogg was an outright opponent of Mrs May's so-called deal. Twice voted against it, and then on the third time, for some reason, voted for it. Look, that's up to people.
I mean, she is an intelligent woman in her own right. She makes up her own mind, don't you accept that?
Well, she doesn't understand what is happening in the Labour seats in which we are standing. I'll give you one little example of what's going on in the country right now and how not only have we poleaxed the Lib Dems, but we're also damaging Labour. There isn't much constituency polling out there, but one that there is Grimsby. Grimsby, which has been Labour since the end of World War II. Have a look at the scores on the doors. Brexit Party up 17% in that constituency, the Labour Party down 18% in that constituency, and with no overall rise in vote share, the Conservatives now have a chance of winning Grimsby.
But you don't.
In Grimsby, the Conservatives, because of what we've done, will probably win. And millions of those Labour voters out there would never, ever vote Conservative.
But you see,
so the argument, hang on, the argument that's being made that we all have to vote Conservative, otherwise we'll split the vote.
That's what she says.
She's wrong.
And so does three of her colleagues.
And they're wrong. They don't understand it.
She may be wrong, but you seem to be pleasing nobody. Because on your decision that you mentioned not to contest Tory-held seats, another of your MEPs, not one of the four today, says that she has been, quote, disenfranchised by my own party. You're pleasing nobody.
Who's that?
It is Alexandra Phillips, MEP.
Well,
it breaks my heart. I've been disenfranchised. Another candidate has said your talk of putting country before party is, quote, absolute codswallop. Nigel Farage has exposed his duplicity to so many supporters who'd put their faith in him.
Sorry.
He's a disgrace to politics. These are your own people. These are your people.
Yeah, I saw that. And yet every one of them knew when I recruited them as candidates, they could be stood down. If we move the Conservative Party a bit further, and perhaps we'll come to whether that's going to happen or not. Look, I could have stood in 600 seats. There would have been at least 24 Liberal Democrat wins in the south and the southwest of England. Right. That would have taken us closer to a second referendum. I did not want to do that. And I did take a decision that was country before party.
And a lot of people don't like it.
Well,
you're attacked from all sides of your own party.
Well,
I mean, it's the same old story, Nigel Farage. We saw it with UKIP. We saw it with UKIP. It's happening again with the Brexit Party. Any party you lead soon descends into chaos and acrimony.
Well, I'll tell you what, any party I lead does do. It shifts the centre of gravity in British politics in a very dramatic way.
And doesn't win seats in the House of Commons.
Well, but do you have to do that to change politics? Well, in this case, in this election, what we need to do is to get established a bridgehead of Brexit Party MPs. And the worry I've got in this election, and this is the genuine worry I've got, if I go to Doncaster, if I go to Barnsley, if I go to Hartlepool, all right, these kind of seats, again, that have never been Conservative in living memory and are very unlikely to be Conservative at any point in the near future. We are the challengers to Labour in those seats, and the vote that is being split is the Brexit vote by the Conservative Party in those seats.
Is it acceptable to call Islam a child rapist death cult?
I don't remember doing that ever in my life.
No, I'm not accusing you.
Good, I'm pleased about that.
But is it acceptable?
No, it wouldn't be. Why?
Because the candidate you're running in Edinburgh South West has said that.
Is that why we got rid of him?
I'm not aware that you have.
I'm sure we have.
Do you know?
Do you know something? Any attempt that gets made to try and paint the Brexit Party into being a right-wing political party that would harbour anybody with extreme views is completely and utterly wrong.
He's on the ballot as the Brexit Party candidate.
Well, if we found out later and we sacked him subsequently, there isn't much we can do. But you know something? You can say that of all the parties in this election.
Is it acceptable to say Islam is the problem, and until we destroy them, the world will never be a safer place?
I've no idea what you're talking about. All I can tell you, Andrew, is we are, in terms of the mix of our candidates, if I look at what we put forward for the European elections, we had more diversity of background, of class, of race than any other party.
He's your candidate in Birmingham Ladywood.
I've absolutely zero idea. How would I?
Well, he's your candidate.
Is it? Well,
flying under your flag.
Very good. Well, I'm not a walking encyclopedia, sorry.
And you don't know if action has been taken against him by your party? Until we destroy them, Muslims.
Well, I'm
the
sure.
world will never be a
I'm
safe
sure
place.
if some idiots slipped through the net, they would have been got rid of immediately.
He's on the ballot.
Any anti-Semites there as well? Or couldn't you find any? Are they all standing for Labour?
Simple question. Who do you want to be Prime Minister on the 13th?
Not Jeremy Corbyn, obviously, because
But who?
Because it's going to be, well,
Who do you want?
it's going to be Boris Johnson.
Do you want that?
I'd prefer that to Jeremy Corbyn, of course.
And who, you're in a Tory, I think you live in a Tory constituency.
I do.
Who are you going to vote for?
I haven't decided yet. Let's see, because there's a big thing here. Boris Johnson said, as this campaign kicked off, that we would now go to negotiate a super Canada Plus style trade deal, and that we would leave next year. Now, if that's what he's doing, that's great.
He's always said
Because
he wants
that's-
a super Canada trade deal.
Well,
He's always said there's nothing new in that.
but if you look at what was in the withdrawal agreement, there was absolutely no mention of anything like that. And in fact, significantly, what Boris said was we would not have political and regulatory alignment. Now, that's what he said 3 weeks ago, and that was why I stood down in 317 seats. My concern is
But
this.
he wrote that in the Telegraph in September of last year.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, but he's always
wasn't-
taken that view.
Well, the withdrawal agreement did not have that in it or anything like it. And my worry is, I appeared the other night.
Well, the withdrawal agreement is not about the future relationship. It's about the terms in which we leave. It's not about free
you're wrong.
trade.
No, I'm sorry, but you.
And he hasn't changed his mind.
Isn't
That's
it
what
funny?
he talked about.
Isn't it funny? This is called the Brexit election, and we're not having any debate about the withdrawal agreement. The political declaration, okay, people say is not legally binding. Actually, it is, because the treaty, if it's ratified, Article 184 makes absolutely clear that what is written in the political declaration is legally binding. So what I want to see is this. We need to see some amendments in Parliament shortly after it comes back to the political declaration. If we don't, we're not going to get a clean break from the European Union. And that is why, left to their own devices, the Conservatives will let us down on Brexit again, as they did under Theresa May. We're the ones that need to hold them to account.
Right. Well, now I'm really puzzled because you are telling people, your supporters in Tory-held seats, to vote Conservative.
No, I'm not. I've never done that.
You want them to?
I've never done that.
You want them to?
I've said don't vote for Labour or the Liberal Democrats.
Right, well,
and this is very much a don't vote election, isn't it?
Well, but on Tuesday you said if you can bring yourself to do it, vote Tory. That's what you said.
If you can
Only
bring
on
yourself...
Tuesday.
What I said actually is many of our supporters will probably stay at home. Some, if they
You
can...
asked Leavers to back the Tories. If you
No,
can bring yourself...
no,
these were your words on
Yeah,
Tuesday.
yeah. Well, let's do the whole quote, shall we? I said many of our people will stay at home, some will spoil their paper, and some will vote Conservative. If, however, and let's make this clear, if over the weekend Boris makes it absolutely clear that we are going to amend those terms of the political declaration that would bind us in everything from financial services to fisheries, if he makes it clear he's going to amend that, then a lot more of them would vote for it.
But you probably, we don't know yet, but it's not looking likely you'll have many, if any, MPs in the House across the road.
I don't know.
And you know that this political declaration is not, if there's an overall Tory majority, it's not going to be changed. It's pie in the sky.
Well, then Brexit will be sold out, and we'll find. And you know, it's very interesting this, because when Mrs. May was Prime Minister, and I started talking about the great Brexit betrayal, everybody thought, isn't it funny? Nigel's never satisfied with anything, but it didn't take very long for me to be proved to be right. And I'll make this prediction: if Boris, and he will have a majority, there's no question about that. If he pushes through the deal, the treaty, as it currently is, with the attached political declaration unamended, we will be back in crisis within 6 months.
And if that deal, as currently constructed,
Yeah.
comes before the European Parliament to be ratified, how would you vote?
I couldn't vote for it as it is. Of course not.
So you would vote against the Brexit deal?
How could I vote for something that isn't Brexit? Okay. How could I vote for something? Just take Article 77 of the political declaration, which says even on everything, even taxation, we'd be tied to EU rules.
But you're writing yourself out the script.
I'm sorry, Andrew. I have stood for 25 years on a point of principle.
Okay.
And the point of principle is, I want us free of the institutions of the European Union. I don't want the European Court of Justice for decades to come to continue to have sway.
You, in your manifesto, though, you have an interesting idea that you want more direct democracy.
Yeah.
And you propose that people could hold a referendum on any issue if they get over 5 million signatures for that issue. Have you checked what holds the record for signatures on a political petition?
Nothing like that, and this is the point.
No, it does actually.
I don't want us to become Switzerland in the sense. In the sense, I don't think referendum should be called on a frivolous basis.
No, and you've put quite a high bar.
Very high bar.
But what's the one issue that has beaten that bar?
I've also said that the
No, what's the one issue?
And no referendum to be repeated within 10 years is also what I've said.
It's the revoke Article 50 petition.
But
it got 6 million signatures.
Yeah, okay. Well, if it was under my proposals, if they were to get 6 million signatures in 2029, they'd be entitled to have a referendum. But you would have wanted a quick referendum if the one in 2016 had been 52-48 the other way. There would have been no prospect of a second referendum. It wouldn't have even been talked about for time to come. And do I think the idea, I mean, what you're getting to here is, it seems to me that Labour and the Conservatives are saying everything should stay as it is. And what I'm arguing is, we need radical political reform in this country, which means the House of Lords, which means the voting system, which means the postal voting system.
I'm just wondering if your proposal for a referendum actually makes stopping Brexit with a second referendum more likely, that you have unwittingly opened the door.
In 2029, that's possible. But by 2029, we should be well out and free.
Let's talk about immigration. Net migration was 212,000 in the past year. You've said it should come down to 50,000. There are already 200,000 vacancies in the NHS and social care. How would you fill them within immigration down to 50,000? We've got full employment.
I think it's utterly shameful that we have guided so many of our young people towards doing social sciences at university, not leaving them any better off in the workplace, and yet we find ourselves with huge skills gaps. It isn't just health. You talk about the skills deficiencies that we have in health because we're not training enough doctors, we're not training enough nurses. I could make the same argument in engineering, where you literally can't run a factory without needing foreign labour.
How do you fill these vacancies now? They exist at the moment.
Right. So, getting people trained to do the jobs we need is not going to happen overnight.
No.
I completely...
6 years to train a doctor.
Absolutely, and I understand that.
So how are you going to do it?
Work permits. There is a difference, you know, between people coming to work and people coming to settle.
So this would be on top of the 50,000?
Yes.
How long would these permits be for?
A year, 2 years, whatever it needs to be.
You would expect someone to come and work in the NHS for just a year?
Maybe 2.
Bring their family?
No.
No.
Of course not.
Well, why would they do that?
Because...
Come for a year? You've got to leave your family behind?
I tell you what,
you're never going to fill these vacancies.
If they want to come and bring their own medical insurance, so they're not a burden on the state, then all of that's fine. But there is a difference between settlement and people coming to work.
We want these people to come to help with our crucial public services, with all these vacancies.
Which we have not planned for.
And you're saying you can only come for a year and you can't bring your spouse and you can't bring the kids.
But the argument...
Why would they do it?
The argument that we need to bring people in from overseas for our health service is, of course, because the population is rising. Do you realise there are 8 million more people living in this country today than there were when Tony Blair came to power in 1997. And actually, you talk about immigration being the solution. Actually, it's immigration that has put nearly 80% of that figure. It's a massive burden.
How many work permits would there be?
It's a flexible thing. It's a flexible thing. It's what you need. I'll tell you what I don't want.
So we'll be on top of the 50,000.
There is always...
So it could be 100,000 on top.
As a work permit, yes.
So the 50,000 figure is kind of meaningless, isn't it?
Well, the 50,000 figure is net settlement, which is a different thing. But here's the point. People can sit there and make arguments why we must keep the doors open forever. I'm going to say this. Our population, on its current trajectory, is headed inexorably for 70 million people at the end of the next decade.
What's wrong with it?
People's quality of life is diminishing directly as a result of it.
Aren't you proud that this is a country people want to come to?
I'm not very proud.
Remember Ronald Reagan? He talked about we built a city and a hill and people came. He was proud.
Have you driven to Glasgow lately?
Asking me about Glasgow is probably a mistake.
Have you
Mr.
driven up the
Farage, of
M6
course.
layly?
Yes.
Have you been around the M25 lately?
Yeah.
Have you travelled on the London Underground
That's
lately?
an infrastructure.
Have you seen,
everybody's promising to invest more infrastructure.
Have you seen how difficult it is for families to even get GP appointments?
Okay.
We've done this to ourselves, and we've done it by having an open door
by not investing in infrastructure.
and not being able to plan in any sensible way for what our future population. And I'm not going to bow down to the god of GDP all the time. There is something called quality of life, and we should think about it.
You want a free trade deal with America. Are you prepared to put drug prices, animal welfare, environmental standards on the table to get it?
No, and the drug prices argument, of course, is utterly ludicrous because no British government would sign up to more expensive drugs, although you could argue we're paying far too much for many of our drugs already. And on the food argument, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, America is, as you well know, and I certainly know, America is the most litigious country in the world. And the reason, of course, chicken is chlorinated, which has been the big debate
It's
on
an
this.
animal welfare issue.
Rather like, actually, every salad pack in our shops right now is
chlorinated. It's an animal welfare
chlorinated.
issue. Because animal welfare standards are lower, the chicken is chlorinated.
Animal welfare standards are lower in Europe than they are here, and yet we still buy an awful lot of product in from Europe.
Are you prepared to put them on the table? That's the question.
With the right labelling? Of course. And then it's a matter of consumer choice.
On drug prices, the president has made it clear that has to be at the centre of all American trade negotiations.
Okay, we are not going to buy expensive drugs.
So that could be a deal breaker.
Look, when we talk about a free trade arrangement, the question is how much is on the table and how much is off the table.
Sure.
And all of that is a negotiation.
Right, but if the Americans
But it's actually academic.
If they insisted on drug prices being on the table, and that's what the president says, we got to end global freeloading, and countries like Britain pay a tiny fraction of what medicines cost in America. If he insists on being on the table, you would walk away.
Well, we just wouldn't buy his drugs, would we? It's very simple. We're not going to. I mean, we are not going to buy more expensive drugs. All right, we can choose to buy drugs. We can manufacture them ourselves, or buy them on the global market.
So there'll be no trade deal.
Do you know something?
This thing that you've put so much store in. Today, you've just said there'll be no trade deal.
No. When it comes to Scotch whisky, when it comes to Levi's jeans, when it comes to the big financial centres of New York and London, there's an awful lot we can do.
Have you told Mr. Trump, who's your friend, have you told him that drug prices and this sort of thing will not be on the table?
I think the truth of it is that the view of the Trump administration is that this conversation you and I are having at the moment is probably wholly academic. Because if the withdrawal agreement passes unamended after Boris has won this election, the chances of us doing free trade deals with America or elsewhere will be hugely inhibited. And it's why I want this to be amended. I want it to be changed so that we have got those options.
Would you be happy to see the NHS on the table in a deal? Because you've spoken in the past about turning the NHS into a private insurance-based system, which is what America has.
My view is that wealthier people should be encouraged to take out private insurance, to lift the burden off a system that is struggling to cope. We think about waiting times, minor operations, things like that. When it comes to opening up the NHS for privatisation, do you want the truth? It's already happened.
But you said that we have to move to an insurance-based system of healthcare. You wanted that to replace the way the NHS is funded.
I want wealthier people to be able to opt out.
But they can do that now.
And you've rather ignored my point.
Can I just...
You've rather ignored my point about procurement here. Already we have Australian companies, American companies...
and European companies.
...running chunks of the NHS.
Can I just give this quote, because it is important. This is only in 2012, he says, I would feel more comfortable my money would return value if I was able to do that through the marketplace of an insurance company, rather than just trusting 100 billion a year to central government. That's what it was in that time. So you were saying I'd rather have a private insurance system than the taxpayer-funded NHS. That's what you said.
I think that higher earners should be able to do this.
You weren't talking about that. You wanted to replace the system.
I wasn't for one moment proposing that those on lower income should take out private health insurance. Of course I wasn't. But has anybody got a plan for relieving the burden off the NHS? Because it is a real problem.
Speaking of Mr. Trump, people heard you on the ITV debate defending his comments about sexually assaulting women.
No, I'm sorry.
Well, let me just say what you said. You said, men say dreadful things sometimes on a night out after a drink.
Yes,
you said.
Yes.
The president doesn't drink. He can't use that as an excuse. Is there nothing the president can say that would make you disown him?
Do you know, if we are going to go down this road where any private comment any man or woman that is distasteful has ever made, bars them from public office, there'd be no one left. And all this virtue signalling about President Trump. Look, you may like him or dislike him. The fact is, he is our most important friend out there in the world.
I understand
in
that.
terms
He is
of
the President
trade,
of the United States,
in terms
but
of
he
trade,
was talking
intelligence
about
sharing.
sexually assaulting women
Right.
and getting away with it.
Yes, and it was being suggested.
That doesn't deserve to be condemned.
Of course, and I did condemn
Well,
it.
you made excuses.
Why don't you read out everything I said the other night?
You said it was
'Cause you were
crass,
then-
it was
yes,
crude, it was
thank
wrong,
you,
but you
thank
say
you.
men say dreadful
Crass,
things.
crude, and wrong.
When we're out on a night after a drink, none of us would be here, you said.
Crass, crude, and wrong. There
And
we
you
are.
and as you know, because you know him well, you can't use alcohol as an excuse for the president.
Men say, I should have said women also on a night out say things they'd rather not have on the front page of a national. I mean, the argument here being made by the left is that Boris Johnson, because of his flowery articles in the Telegraph, or President Trump, because of these bad comments, should not even be in public life. And I'm arguing we're going way too far.
I've just asked you your view and why you were trying to excuse it. But I'm not excusing Let's end where we began on Brexit.
Yeah.
There are a number of Leave seats where a poll suggests the Labour and Tory are neck and neck. Mm-hmm. But the Brexit party's got no chance. It's pretty much an irrelevance. Berry North, Weaver Vale would be another one. High Peak, too. You're about 5-6% in this particular poll.
I'd be very
careful. Tory and Labour are neck and neck. What should Brexit Party supporters do? Should they vote for your party or should they vote Conservative?
If the Brexit Party wasn't there, or if we attempted to row back the Brexit Party candidates in those seats, Labour would win every single one of them. And it's something that the London media doesn't seem to understand.
So if Labour holds on to these seats because your voters didn't move to the Tories, even though you had no chance yourself, you will go down in history as the man who thwarted Brexit, not the man who created Brexit, who thwarted it.
I would ask voters to understand two things. Number one, if we weren't standing, the Tories wouldn't even be competing in those areas. And number two, vote tactically in seats where the Conservative Party have not won in living memory and where we are the challenger. Don't waste your vote. If you vote Conservative where we're challenging, you're splitting the Leave vote.
Nigel Farage, thank you very much.
Thank you.